In this video, I want to give you a quick introduction to the history of MOOCs, how they came to be, and especially focusing on the mainstream evolution that led to them. For a long while now, many universities have taped their lectures and offered them on private or public TV channels. Some universities were even built around distance learning. For instance, I remember as a kid in the 80s, watching on Sunday morning on the BBC lectures of the British Open University. These lectures were great, and they were still great fun to watch, if only because you could see university professors wearing elephant pants straight out of the 70s. Now, in a residential university, the advantage to tape the lectures would be that these students can watch a class they had missed or misunderstood. At some point in the 2000s, this transitioned to the web. Students could now watch classes on demand with extra convenience. But with the transition to the web, professors had now more flexibility and could do something new. They could post handouts on the website, for instance. This is a form of blended learning. Or, if they had recorded the lecture 1 year, say in 2005, in 2006 for their new lecture, they could put the old one, the 2005 lecture, online and decide to manage the class time differently in their new live lecture in 2006. Instead of covering material like they've always done, they could start assuming that the students had already watched the material and hold more interactive discussions and challenge the students in class. This is called flipped teaching, where the goal of the instructor is to make face time with the students most useful to them, to try to engage them in active learning. At the same time, if the lectures were already recorded, it also opened up the possibility of sharing all their material with the world. Why not do it? This was done by MIT with OpenCourseWare, where they started to offer freely their regular lectures online. Starting in 2011, it became easier to date things because the developments focalized around Stanford. Some professors there realized that their lectures that were available online for the world actually attracted a huge audience, in the tens of thousands of students, a massive scale. They decided to create their own startups. Daphne Koller and Andrew Ng started Coursera, while Sebastian Thrun started Udacity. However, unlike OpenCourseWare, these companies started offering certificates and raising large levels of venture capital funding. $85 million for Coursera. American universities sense a real threat there, mostly in the certificate. Suddenly, you could buy for hundreds of dollars and hard work what usually required $40,000 and hard work. As a response, Stanford started Class2Go, and MIT started edX. edX was set up as a non-profit startup, and quickly, Harvard, Berkeley, and a bunch of other major schools joined them on the portal edX.org. Stanford even decided to drop Class2Go and work with edX, since their software was open source and available for anyone to use. You can see them at Stanford Online. These are universities that compete on everything else, but there they collaborated and injected money at levels that matched the venture capital funding. So the situation at this stage is that Coursera is the major MOOC portal that has agreement with around 100 universities. Facing them, there is an unusual alliance of the world's most famous universities trying to counteract Coursera's dominance. In addition, a bunch of other initiatives have been started in 2013, mostly divided along geopolitical borders. Future Learn in the UK, iVersity in Germany, France Université Numérique in France, Miranda X in Spain and Portugal and Latin America, and EdRAC in the Middle East. Now, is that the whole picture for MOOCs? No, this is only for so-called XMOOCs, the large-scale classes. In parallel, and even starting in 2008, a whole different type of MOOCs called CMOOCs was developed. The emphasis there was not on the scale, but rather on the C, which stands here for connectivism. I'm utterly unqualified to exactly define what connectivism is, but let me try to pass on my understanding of it. In some ways, XMOOCs push contents to the student, generally in the form of video. I intentionally put the video side above to emphasize that it flows from instructor to students and that the students are left on the forum to discuss. Connectivism, as I understand it, highlights the other direction. In a CMOOC, the instructor should also actively pull the best content and ideas from the students and integrate it in the course content. In fact, this process should be as decentralized as possible. This means that the content aggregation, production, and integration should also be done by the students, but they should get assistance to help their learning. For instance, they should be helped to make the important personal connections with each other so they can build the content collaboratively. They should also be helped to connect with external sources, as it's unlikely that all the necessary information resides within the class. So I've now presented to you both CMOOCs and XMOOCs and tried to clarify the distinction between them. Many people try to blend the two models, taking the best out of both types. I find myself that the distinction between pushing content in an XMOOC and pulling ideas in a CMOOC helps me, so that distinction helps me a lot to think of MOOCs and where they should be going.